views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to Bronxtalk. He was one of baseball's greatest players and, in fact, was known as the Great One. Roberto Clemente, number 21 for the Pittsburgh Pirates, a member of the 3,000 Hit Club, and inspiration for legions of baseball fans across the generations. He was also one of the world's great humanitarians. As you well know, he was tragically killed on New Year's Eve in 1972 in a plane crash while on a mercy mission to Nicaragua. Tonight's guests were part of a 2006 effort that completed Clemente's Nicaragua mission with 2,000 pounds of food. And on the 44th anniversary of his death and the 10th anniversary of the completion of that mission, they are taking the next step in the legacy of the Great One and the next step in a lifetime of empowerment and giving back. We're on tape tonight because of the holidays, so there won't be phone calls. But if you have questions or comments, send an email to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. For the here and now, he is a special consultant to the New York Yankees, an author and ex-Yankee bat boy, which might be the best job of them all. We welcome to Bronxtalk Ray Negron. Ray, nice to have you.
Great to be here.
Great, thank you. And the CEO and founder of Project Club Clemente, my longtime friend Eliezer Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Eliezer, let's start with you. Just for fans and friends who don't know, what was the mission and how did Project Club Clemente get started?
We got started in 2002. And the idea behind the project at first was to try to get enough support to rename the 3,000 Hit Club after the only ball player that has exactly 3,000 hits, Roberto Clemente. Thus, Project Club Clemente, the 3,000 Hit Club. A couple years into our project, we then shifted gears and focused on the mission that he never completed, the promise that he made that was never fulfilled. 33 years after his death, we chartered an aircraft. We loaded it with 16,000 pounds of aid, and that's the weight that was reported Clemente was taken to Nicaragua. And we took off with Roberto Clemente Jr. from Puerto Rico, headed towards Nicaragua. The flight landed in Nicaragua before midnight, and when we got off, we met a lot of elected officials, and we passed out cards that said, "Promesa cumplida," and that means promise fulfilled.
I'm going to ask you, and then we're going to bring in our baseball expert here to fill in the blanks too. Why was this so important for you to do at some expense, and a tremendous amount of effort, and why for you as a young man growing up was Roberto Clemente so inspirational?
Gary, I want to tell you that this was a dream come true because it was inspired by a dream. And it's also a Bronx tale because we exist here in the Bronx. And it's important that people know that his promise was fulfilled. And it was fulfilled right here in Bronx, New York. I wish I could tell you that I could let go of the dream, which is what I wanted to do. But the more I tried to forget about it, the more it bugged me. And then
what bugged you? That he never got to do what he wanted to do on that horrible New Year's Eve?
Exactly. There was something about that dream that told me that this was unusual. Gary, let me ask you, how often have you had a dream where you walk into a theater to sit down and watch a movie? And in that movie, you're being told what to do. And at the end, you see the words that says the end. And you wake up and you feel there's something here that's different. And then when I got up, I started calling some friends, and I said, I just had this incredible dream about Roberto Clemente. And I said, do you know who he was? And, well, didn't he die in a car accident a couple years ago? No, he died in a plane crash in '72. The more I inquired, the more I realized that people knew the name, but not the legacy.
And they needed to know about who he was, what he stood for.
Exactly. There's, parks, streets, schools named after him. He was one of 2 ball players to have the mandatory waiting period for induction to the Hall of Fame waived. He was a special person, and to not fulfill that mission that took his life, to me, was not acceptable, and I could not let go of that.
Rainer, growing up in the Bronx, Puerto Ricans more so than I, but I certainly have been a baseball fan. Why was Roberto Clemente so important? Not only because he was a great player, we've seen many great players, certainly in the Bronx, but what about him, for Puerto Ricans in particular, was so special?
For me, it was a scenario of not only Puerto Ricans. I thought he was someone that exemplified the aspect of being somebody. He always used to say, besides being a Puerto Rican, I am a black man, okay? And I thought that was something that was strong, and something that the aspect of his pride in saying that. People don't even realize that, and because we are of color, okay? And he was a hero. There aren't too many heroes in baseball. Baseball is not about the aspect of can you hit and can you catch and can you throw. That's all nice, that's all good. But in essence, how do you keep the name alive? What's so special about you that 20, 30 years later, we're still talking about you? This is what this man did. He, in essence, made us understand who this man is long after people forget. People forget. He won't let people forget. And that's the important thing. He died a hero. He died wanting to do something that was very, very important at that time. And you know what? People to this day don't give Eli the credit that he deserves for what he did. He did something that's incredible. He did something that's a movie, okay?
We were talking about that before the show, that maybe there ought to be, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but as we understand, there were all kinds of issues. You had to get a second plane. I mean, you skipped over some of the details, but that was only done because of your passion for the project, for your passion for keeping the memory alive. Ray, just from a baseball perspective, you close your eyes. We were talking about it before, and I know what I think about when I think of Roberto Clemente. When you think of Roberto Clemente on the field, what do you think about?
The greatest right fielder of all time. A guy who could do it all.
And it's interesting, because we all know the great players. We just saw, for example, Ken Griffey Jr. inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'd love to see the two of them in the same outfield together, or matching up. What I want to do, there's Eliezer, you put together a not quite a full-length movie, but there is a short video that we have that documents the project. And then when we come back, we're going to answer the next question, and that is what we're doing next, or what you're going to be doing next to honor the great one. So let's take a look. I don't know if there's a title to this, but this is Project Club Clemente, Completing the Mission. Let's take a look. Can you see it on the little screen?
This man made a promise to the people of Nicaragua. The last 16,000 pounds of aid, I'm going to personally take it there, because he heard that the aid was being taken by the soldiers. He stepped up to the plate to help the people of Nicaragua. He never got his at bat. So we call this project the Flight for Humanity, Mr. Roberto Clemente's last at bat. And that is completing his promise 33 years after he made it. So we came to talk to GMD. They're the people that are going to be handling the ground transportation and the response for loading the aircraft. We came here to find out if we can bring a trailer that we have full of aid that hasn't been processed yet, to see if we can process it here. $15,694. We're 306 pounds from reaching our goal of 16,000 pounds. Well, the captain of the aircraft calls me up to tell me that an engine blew and that another engine won't be available until the 6th of January. And that was totally unacceptable.
Es significativo poderlo hacer la misma fecha. ¿Sí?
El avión tiene que llegar allá el 31.
And now we're in need of an aircraft. You can't transport any people? 16,000 pounds.
So you need a 727.
El viaje como tal, pues no me preocupa, lo que me preocupa es la fecha.
I just heard about a couple of days ago that he managed to get a plane, you know?
Son 33 años el día de hoy que se cumplen, pero es como si hubiese sido ayer.
Finally off the ground. It's taken 33 years to get to this point. But I think now that Mr. Clemente still can rest in peace.
Estamos muy contentos de estar aquí, definitivamente. Es unos sacrificios bastante con Elixir, su esposa, Bertolisa, la familia, han llevado a cabo esto y para mí pues cierra un capítulo de mi vida personal. En realidad,
I'm honored. You know, that he feels that I should have been here and that he wanted to be for me to be here. How can I say no, you know?
Este proyecto consigue el ejemplo del padre de Roberto Clemente, que Dios lo tiene en su gloria por su corazón, y sigue ese ejemplo de ayudar al necesitado.
Recordando a Clemente, en Nicaragua estamos, porque los puertorriqueños nunca nos tocamos.
Well, we don't have a studio audience, but we can all, those of us who are here. You know, there's one very interesting detail that Eliezer reminded me of. So it actually was supposed to go on a year earlier, but there was the tsunami, where was that?
In South Asia.
In South Asia. And so at that point, how could you give what you had collected for this project? And you rerouted the stuff and then had to collect goods and things that you were going to give away the year later.
The money that we raised, we donated to an organization in Queens so they can help build a center for kids who lost their parents
in the tsunami.
Sri Lanka.
And you know what? Really, that is part of Clemente's legacy, because that's what presumably he might have wanted to have happen.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to mention one other thing before we get into a further dialogue, just about what he stood for. And I'm going to hold this up. This is a favorite, but it's, I guess, my least favorite thing. I don't know if we can get a close-up of this baseball card. This is, to me, what a lot of people don't understand. I mean, certainly we learned about Jackie Robinson and what he meant. But I want people to take a look at it. I don't know how close we can get, but this baseball card, I think it's from 1968. It says on it, not Roberto Clemente, but Bob Clemente,
Right.
which is just as racist and as insulting as you can imagine. Can you see that? Could you imagine calling, for example, Pedro Martinez, calling him Peter Martinez, or calling Johan Santana John Santana, or Juan Uribe John Uribe? This is an absolute racist, disgusting thing. And yet, the dignity of Roberto Clemente, his greatness, he never wavered as a ball player and as a humanitarian. So I just wanted to make that point. To me, it's a very small thing, but that's the kind of indignity that he withstood and made him worthy of the name, the Great One.
Gary, everywhere he went, he promoted who he was. In fact, every time Vera was about to give birth, he would send his wife to Puerto Rico to make sure that his kids were born there.
Really?
That's how much it mattered to him.
Ray, the game of baseball, and you know, we talk about Roberto Clemente in reverential terms, and I know for me as a very big baseball fan, and I see the way he played, the way he carried himself. Is there a way that you could explain or characterize the importance of the game of baseball, not only to Puerto Ricans, but really to everybody, and why a baseball figure becomes so luminescent as opposed to maybe another sportsman or even a movie star?
You know, I'll never forget sitting down with Frank Sinatra and the aspect of him loving Joe DiMaggio because of he said he was so graceful as a baseball player. You know, and I found that to be fascinating. I found the way he idolized baseball. People don't know how he idolized baseball players. He loved Joe Pepitone, who in essence was a guy that was supposed to be but wasn't. But Sinatra loved the aspect of who he was as a baseball player.
How ironic to be maybe the greatest singer, one of the greatest entertainers of all time. His heroes were on that baseball field.
Exactly.
Something about this game, folks. Folks who know me personally, I'm a big baseball fan. Something about this game transcends. Okay, so now the next step is coming up. We said this is now 10 years after completing that mission. Explain what the next step is.
We recently celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Flight for Humanity. The Flight for Humanity was completing Clemente's last humanitarian effort. As a ball player, that's the mission that took his life. To celebrate the 10th anniversary, we wanted to celebrate that aspect of Mr. Clemente that made it possible for him to help Nicaragua in the first place, and that was his baseball talents. In that regard, we partnered up with the Bronx YMCA.
It's like, oh yeah, right, he was a great baseball player.
He was a great baseball player. And you know, Gary, on an aside, to me, Clemente represents the pulse of Major League Baseball. I see him as what every ball player ought to be like when they're not wearing a uniform. That's what Clemente means to me. So we took care of the baseball, his humanitarian aspect back in 2005. Now we wanted to address his baseball skills. With the Bronx YMCA, we're collecting baseball equipment, and we call that project Operation Batter Up. Whatever we collect, we're going to ship to the YMCA in Nicaragua. They would then distribute it to the little leagues in Nicaragua. I will fly out there when the shipment gets there, once again, to ensure, like Clemente was going to do, that the aid gets to where it's supposed to get to.
Ray, we go back to you for the baseball consultation. For young people growing up, and I mean, it's well documented that baseball really helped to save your life. How important is this part of this mission, and now completing, I guess, mission number 2, numero dos, in this?
The right people are not promoting baseball, okay? The right people, there are people that promote the game, but they're not promoting it for the right reasons. He's the exception to the rule. He promotes it for the right reason, for the love of the game, okay? It just bothers me because baseball is the most beautiful game in the world. Like Babe Ruth once said, baseball is the only game, you know, and it's so true. And I worship the aspect of what this man does because I wish I could do that, but I'm too selfish. He's not
Oh,
selfish.
I don't know that that's quite the
Okay.
case. We could do a show on Ray Negron and some of the things that you've been doing and the books you've written and all that. So I appreciate you saying that, but you're being a little humble. But really, the game is very special. And I guess, what do you learn from the game of baseball?
You know what? The game of baseball has given me life because I got to work for the greatest owner of all time, in George Steinbrenner. And the lessons that I learned from him, people don't understand because they think they knew who George Steinbrenner was. I knew who George Steinbrenner was. He was someone that in essence understood and made me understand that I was somebody, okay? And he was saying that long before Jesse Jackson was saying that. And it was the aspect of understanding that even though I was a man of color, I meant something, and that because of what he did that day and helping me with the whole graffiti story, it's the aspect of what was I going to do with it. Okay, I cut you a favor. What are you going to do with it, young man?
You know, there's a lesson here, and I know when I turn to my left, and if I say, what did Roberto Clemente teach you, you're going to tell me essentially the same thing.
Exactly.
Is that basically, you know, you've had an opportunity in life to do this. You've been inspired by Roberto Clemente. What are you going to do with that opportunity? I want to do something, and you know I have it here. While I do it, I want you to explain to me and tell people what the contact info is, because I'm going to donate some bats. My kids played Little League, like all of your kids played Little League, and we're going to donate some bats.
Great.
This comes from the Axelbank family.
Thank you.
To Batter Up, Project Club Clemente. I'd like to thank my son and daughter.
Thank you so much.
There's some nice Easton bats here.
Yes.
My son and daughter got some hits in Little League with them, and we hope there's a couple of hits left for the youngsters in Nicaraguaa.
Yeah,
T-ballers.
I like that.
You got to start as early as you can. So now, for people who want to say, well, wait a minute, we've been inspired, number one, by Roberto Clemente, I'll take them out of your way. Number two, by the work that you're doing. For people who want to donate, who want to participate, who want to learn more about the great one, how do they get to you? What do they do?
Gary, what you just did, you went to bat for number 21. And that's what we're asking Clemente fans, anyone that's heard the name, anyone that's inspired by the work that we've done and will continue to do, you can contact me. My number is 917-299-5610. We have several drop-off locations. The YMCA at 2 Castle Hill, here in the Bronx, is a drop-off location. Also my office, the Bronx Manhattan North Association of Realtors. The address is 1867 Williamsbridge Road. If you have equipment that's fairly new or still has life in it, so like
hey, look, there's a couple of hits left in these things. I'm telling you,
a lot more than a couple.
And these aluminum bats last a long time.
You can donate. You can donate it to Operation Batter Up, and we'll ensure that it gets to Nicaragua. We're looking for balls, Gary, bats, catcher's
Gloves,
equipment, gloves, batting gloves,
I'll bet your
chest
catcher's equipment
protectors.
is important as well.
Absolutely, catcher's equipment, equipment that you use to practice, like the long stick with a ball at the end, or nets, anything that deals with a
Ray
tee,
mentioned the batting tee for kids, for little
all that
kids.
stuff we'll take, and if it's usable, we'll clean it up and we'll send it to folks who can really really appreciate it.
Let me just articulate how difficult it was to go into my closet and say, gee, I know there's bats here. We had so much equipment. Of course, they kept growing up and growing out of it. So you go in your closet. I'm telling you to do this. You go in your closet. You say, oh, we do have some old bats, or we do have some old gloves, or my daughter or my son played catcher one day, and we never really used that mask again. And so let's just repeat the information so we know where it's going to.
Okay, the equipment that we collect is going to go to the Bronx YMCA. It'll be shipped to
to Castle Hill.
Castle Hill.
How did I know that off the top of my head?
It's where Castle Hill begins, to Castle Hill. And then it'll be shipped to the YMCA in Nicaragua for distribution to the Little Leagues. And you could also drop off stuff in my office, and that's 1867 Williamsbridge Road, and that's the Bronx Manhattan North Association of Realtors.
How bad is the need for equipment down there, or is it goes without saying.
It goes without saying, Gary. I mean, they've yet to repair the damage from the earthquake in '72. It's a poor place in need of a lot of help, and this is just symbolic in nature, but it'll get the kids to think about Clemente, and it'll get them to use equipment that still has a lot of life in it.
Our friend Ray was being a little bit humble. He didn't want to do it on camera, but he did bring a bag of baseballs also that's going. So we all appreciate that you're going to do that. Ray, before we let you go, you're working on all different kinds of projects. We know that Mr. Steinbrenner, in essence, saved your life. That's been well documented. Do you have a couple of books out? Why don't you tell us about what's out and what's going on?
Well, you know, I mean, I've written 5 books now. I have my 6th coming out next year. It's actually a graphic novel. Based upon my first year with the Yankees, and it's called The Boss and the Bat Boy.
The Boss and the Bat Boy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I love it.
And that is actually the story.
So that'll be out next year, and I'm working with Steven Van Zandt in the middle of his tour with Bruce Springsteen and the band.
The E Street Band.
E Street Band. You know, we're working on a comedy. A TV comedy called Theo Papi.
I love that.
What a great Bronx story, Ray Negron. Thank you. Eliezer Rodriguez, thank you so much
Gary,
for what you're doing.
Help me spread the word.
And folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or put them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. We ask you to like Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can check out the archives at bronxnet.org. You can see all our old shows. You find us on the lower right navigation bar. Now, next week, the developer who is building housing on a large swath of the South Bronx in a project that has rankled some, Keith Rubenstein of the Cherritt Group, is scheduled to be our guest on January 25th. Then on February 1st, a public school teacher who is retiring after 47 years in a Bronx high school will be here to talk about his career as well as get into what is really going on in Bronx high schools. That is a show you won't want to miss. You don't want to miss any of our shows, of course. Thanks to Dahlia, our producer, Shirley, the director, Helen's working here, everybody's working here. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.